Just give it a tug. A little more. Barely gonna clear. Got it. You got it?
Yep.
Okay.
Woo!
What do we got here?
We got 70 pounds of goodness.
Oh yeah.
Gunk in the antifreeze, but that's about it.
It's got some mileage on it.
Yeah.
A lot of carbon built up. That's surprising.
Well, I don't think the carbs are tuned up very well.
Yeah.
Fuel was just flowing through them.
Well, sure.
Look
Look at how this is just washed.
Yeah, it's washed out. Yep.
Let's get a look at the cylinder.
Yeah.
Andy, I got to give some credit to our viewers. We were going to give this thing a pass, figuring that everything inside the motor was going to be fine.
Yep.
And we will just put the external back together again. And a lot of viewers says, well, you got it apart, you can't trust, based on what you found so far, you can't trust what's inside of there. And they were right. We were hesitant to go this far.
Yep.
But, good thing we did. So here's what wait, before we even talk about that, you brought us a gift for the shop.
Yep. The second flag, 5th Special Forces Group, Dio Presso Liber, hanging up on the wall now.
There you go. Representing. All right. Thank you for that.
My pleasure.
Okay. So we start looking things over. And the first thing I noticed was that some of the rockers weren't quite aligned the way they should be, which is common on these motors. The quality control, Chrysler quality control on these wasn't really what you would expect it to be. So that was the first indication. And then we decided we were going to pull the heads because we want to change the valve springs. Shane Polito over at ComCam is hooking you up.
He is. So we're going to have a special grind, solid lifter,
Right.
Camshaft coming in, and we're going to replace the valve springs. So we decided to pull the heads.
Yeah, knock the heads off it. So he showed up here this morning and we popped the heads off of it, and man, this is a mess. Let's start with this engine. This engine isn't as machine shop fresh as we were led to believe that it is. This thing had some miles on it. It had some really bad running miles on it. The carbon patterns are completely, they're all over the map. It's just bad. This engine ran for a while and it was washing gas. Now the cylinder walls themselves look okay, but you could see, I mean, this is a relatively low mileage engine, and look at how much gum is at the top here. The engine is not going to have to be rebored, but it's definitely going to have to be rehoned. But that's kind of a little bit of the least of it. The water passages.
Water passages are just filled with rust and gunk. I mean, this motor would not have cooled. Just look at that.
Oh, shit.
Oh, this one.
You know what? It's a good thing we popped this thing apart.
Yeah.
Evenly.
Optimally, yeah,
Right.
evenly.
Yeah, we poked through a bunch of them. It's just solid crust. So the block is going to have to come out. We're going to have to knock the core plugs out of it and knock whatever scale. This block's already been hot tanked. A hot tank will only get you so much. When you've got that caked on crust, it stays there. And actually, the hot tanking a lot of times will take away that layer of like, let's call it protective rust. You take that out of the way, those chunks of crust now are able to break loose and find their way through, and that's what we found over here. A couple of water passages were completely clogged. We poked through them with a screwdriver. That's just, well, we get the video of that.
Yeah.
So,
And then the washers on the bolts.
Yeah. So as I'm taking the valley nuts off, he's working outside and I'm working in the valley. And as I'm taking the valley nuts off, I noticed that a couple of them just I couldn't get a wrench on them. This doesn't really fit. I'm going to take this wrench to the grinder. It's still tight. Got to get it just right. I should be able to get it open now. Nope, got to take more of this wrench. And B, oil gushed out. Right? There's no way oil can get into this cavity here. So here, I'll show you on the head. So this is the common Hemi setup. This stud screws into the bottom of the intake port, okay? And then it fits through that boss, and then there's a nut that goes here. All right, so nothing, once this is tightened in place, nothing can get in there. But for some reason, I couldn't get a wrench. See, there are these clearance areas, and I couldn't get a wrench on there. Actually, I had to grind the wrench down to get it on there. Well, it's because somebody had added washers to this. And here, you got those washers?
Yep.
You got the ones that are bent?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, the washers are just completely, they're just, you know, they're bent. So oil was able to get up in there. Now the oil itself being in there isn't really down here. You can see on this one where oil just gushed out of it. The oil being in here in and of itself isn't a problem, but the fact that oil could get in there says that wasn't sealing and it wasn't sealing evenly. So, and then we had washers on the top of the motor, on the head bolts. Yeah. Yeah, these giant washers that somebody had stuck in there. These engines go together. There's no washers on the head bolts. There's no washers on the studs. But somebody had added these things. And this is a problem because if you notice, this is all Chrysler head bolts. This has nothing to do with just Hemis. There's this shoulder right here. Right, and when you put the washer on, you see that the shoulder is almost completely covered by the washer. So that shoulder doesn't actually get a chance to get down into the head and center the bolt. So we found oil in places where there should never have been any oil, and we found washers in places, no washers where they're supposed to be. You use washers like this when you use studs on one of these engines, not the head bolts. So I said that we had found misalignment on the rockers. And this is actually more a problem or more a factor of Chrysler quality control. And this is what you find with Hemis, and this is why people were like, they hated them back in the day. They hated having to work on them. Quality control wasn't what it was supposed to be. So you see these holes right here. These correspond to dowels that are in the head, and it holds these rocker stands straight. Well, you see this is straight, this is straight, this is straight, this is straight. This one's off just a little bit. It's wallowed out a little bit, but now look at this side. Look at where the dowel is. Look at where the dowel is on this one, and look how wallowed out that is. And the same on this side. So that accounts for our rocker alignment issues. We got a lot of work to do.
I think the heads themselves were not cut for a gasket. Or a
Oh,
O-ring.
no, the heads, the heads don't look like they have any damage. We've really got to clean them up. You can see, we can't really assess the chambers yet. Look at all of the carbon. I mean, look at these crazy patterns. And honestly, this is typical of what you find on, a quote restoration type of Hemi. I've driven a bunch of these, and they never run good. They always run. They're dogs. When you get one that's set up right, it'll surprise you. They turn on hard. But for the most part, you go to the average Hemi car that's at the average Hemi, at the average car show, and you get in there and you turn the key, you try to drive it off, and it just they run like garbage. And this is kind of indicative of what you find when you take one of those engines apart. The tune was way off. Now we also found another problem. Now I don't know if we can attribute this to head bolt issues, and I didn't break the head bolts. You broke the head bolts. They felt even to you?
No, they didn't feel that even.
Okay.
That you could tell a couple were a little bit, took more oomph.
All right. Well, we looked at the head gaskets, and the head gaskets look like they're fine. They seal fine. But here, come around here, Kat. But we've got what looks to be an obvious carbon trace. So you can see it's ashy. It's not just dirty. See, here's a clean one, okay? And then here we've got this, and you can see this ashy mark. So this was sharing fire. These two cylinders are sharing fire, and there's actually a corresponding mark on the side of this dome that goes with that. And here you can see also this one not as bad, but you can see this one. You had combustion getting past the firing on the head gasket, but not quite all the way across to the cylinder. So we had issues there. See, the head gasket itself looks okay.
You can see that.
So now this brings into question the integrity or the flatness of the deck and of the cylinder head. Now we've got to go further and clean this thing up really good before we can. But the bottom line is this.
It's coming.
It's coming out. It's coming apart. This whole thing. I'm sorry, man. It started out as a,
It was a simple tune-up.
right, and now it's going to turn into a whole rebuild. So, but I says we got to give credit to some of you viewers here, because I don't think either one of us wanted it to go that far.
No.
So we were like, maybe it was a state of denial. Let's check the bearings. We checked the bearings. Crank looks good. Bearing looks good.
Yeah. The hatch, cross hatch, and the cylinders from the bottom look
Right,
very
the cross
good.
hatch from the cylinders from the bottom look really good. And I think both of us were just like, yeah, let's just bolt on everything around it. But you guys were right. It paid to pull the heads and give things a look, and we obviously have a lot of work to do on this. So the next step today,
I think is to pull the block out.
we'll get this thing out and we'll get it mounted on a stand, and we'll start cleaning stuff up. And when are you coming back again?
Well, so waiting on some parts, hoping the cam comes in this week, and waiting on a gas tank, but really to see if we need to order anything for the short block here.
Right. So it's good. It's not going to happen in the afternoon. This is going to be a few weeks, while we do all of this stuff. I wasn't expecting to have to go through this.
No.
All right. That's it for now, and we'll update you guys in a couple days and find out exactly what we found in here. Huh? Say see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.